Hey everybody, it's Mindee here. I have a drum lesson for you today. Today's lesson is actually less of a specific lesson and more of tips, tricks, and advice for those of you that are trying to play faster, upbeat, up-tempo music and don't yet have the stamina and endurance to complete the whole song at the tempo which it requires. So I actually saw someone post about this, asking about, they're trying to play punk rock, eighth notes at a high tempo, and are having trouble keeping it up the whole song, which is definitely happens, especially in the beginning stages. But you still want to play the band, and you still want to keep that song driving. And as the drummer, your main objective is to keep that tempo steady the entire time and not let it drop. And obviously people are going to say, oh, just go to quarter notes, which does work, and I'm going to throw some of that in here as well, but sometimes it's not what you want to do, and you do want to continuously try to grow as a drummer, so you don't want to just plateau at quarter notes and be the quarter note all the time drummer, right? So, two parts to this, and part number one, the most important part, is get out your practice pad, get out a metronome, and do the work to build the speed and endurance. 8 on a hand. Start slow, build your way up in tempo, start with those full wrist movements. Once you really got that down, learn finger technique so that you can do the finger tapping and go super fast with minimal effort in the wrist. And then, if you don't know, I've played in a lot of punk bands, kind of my thing. So yeah, anyway, I kind of do a combination of both, like, if you know the molar technique where you do from the full stroke to the tap, or downstroke and then an upstroke, the upstroke kind of has a little bit of a whipping motion to that. So I combine that whipping motion with finger tapping to kind of give me like an extra edge so that I can keep up fast eighth notes for an extended period of time. As you are working on this, big part of advice is focus on posture. I used to be a hunched over drummer, and even though I, do this, everyone kind of play, and then hunch. Do you feel the difference? Do you feel how this is more work than that? But yet a lot of drummers end up hunching. So I've worked on this, and I want you to try and focus on posture, sitting straight up as you play, and you'll definitely notice a difference, and focus on not allowing any tension to build in your upper back, your shoulders, or your upper arms. All the work's coming from your wrists and or fingers. So the rest of you should be almost like Zen, like whoosh. Just the wrists and the fingers are doing that work to get that speed. So that's the first part, is do the work to get the goods. Second part, these are ways that you can find areas within songs to give yourself a break so that you can keep the tempo driving without falling behind, without weaving in and out of the tempo. Keep it super solid the whole time, still have that driving energy. So tip number one would be rotate between eighth notes and quarter notes. So for example, maybe you'll do the verse as eighth notes on the hi-hat, and when you get to the chorus, switch to quarter notes. You can do them on your ride, or you can do them on the crash cymbal. The crash is really cool because it's such a loud cymbal that you don't have to put a lot of energy into it to get it to sound really ringy and bright. So as you're doing that quarter notes on the crash, it gives yourself an extra bit of rest because you don't really have to put as much into it. You can even almost do it with your arm, and just a slight bit of wrist to give your wrist that recovery time before it goes back into the eighth notes on that verse. Vice versa, maybe you want to play the verse as quarter notes on your hi-hats and then switch to a chorus that has a steady drive and eighth note ride. Different ways, but as long as that tempo is staying where it should, that's the main focus. It's not being flashy. You're playing for the song, not to impress everyone in the audience. If the song sounds good, they'll be impressed. So a couple other places where you can work in recovery time so that you can keep that music driving. Fills. And then there's two things I'm going to mention on fills. First one, linear fills are great when you need some recovery time. And if you throw on the bass, even better, you know? Like, especially beginners, you're playing a super fast punk song. When you get to that fill, you want to just do a roll. You just want to hit everything. Right? Impressive? Maybe. But you could just try going straight to like something really easy. One thing I like is the flam bass. Or even just almost like a rhythmic phrase as opposed to like a roll. Just nice and easy. Something like that where it's like you're giving your hands that recovery time they need to go back into those super fast eighth notes. Another part two of this is playing the silence, which is really important and something that a lot of beginners kind of don't even consider, or even a lot of drummers that are competitive think they need to hit every single note for it to sound good. Like, how many notes can I hit in this one fill? But the silence is almost like its own instrument. Think of a rest or a moment of silence as its own drum. Like, there it is right there, the silence drum. The nothingness is something. There is music in the silence. So a lot of times you can just like add the rest in the middle to give yourself a little rest. Like, that sounded cool, right? Or like the little pause says something. Even though there's nothing there, it says something. And if you can get yourself a really crisp cymbal choke, that really will highlight your fast tempo. Add in some head movements, it'll look totally cool. Yeah. A whole measure of rest gives you plenty of time to recover. Move your head as much as you want. It looks like you're doing a lot of work, but the thing that's doing all the work is actually taking a nice little break. So the next advice I would have, as far as, let's say you're trying to play super fast, you want to keep up those eighth notes for the whole song, but your wrist stamina isn't quite there yet. Within the beat, play planned rest. So for example, on the and of every one, you can rest. Or you could do Charlie Watts style, where you rest whenever the snare hits. So you're still keeping up those eighth notes, but you're giving yourself just a millisecond of recovery time, which, even if it's one little beat, makes a big difference when you're playing eighth notes for like 3 minutes straight. Also, whenever you hit the crash, let's say you're hitting the crash on 1, you're not going to go right back. You can go back on 2 instead of the and of 1. So 1. So that gives yourself the and of 1, a little tiny rest. But also, when you hit the cymbal, you can use the momentum of the arm movement to hit the cymbal instead of your wrist, which gives you another little millisecond of rest. And they may not seem like much, but they will make a difference, trust me. So yeah, those are different ways that you can still keep that tempo driving while working in your own time on being that drummer that can keep that stamina and play an 8-minute song non-stop, eighth notes. But until then, these are just some techniques that you can use to help you out on your way. You know, I think every drummer should try to start playing with people and in bands as quickly as possible, because there's so much to be learned there. But you don't want to be, holding everyone back because you're determined to be the eighth note non-stop, Well, thank you everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you are looking for private lessons, hit me up. I'm a teacher. I really appreciate it. Follow me on YouTube. You'll see I have a YouTube series, Mindee's Mini Drum Lessons. Check it out there. You can also find it on my website, mindeejorgensen.com, and all over the Facebook world. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you guys. Happy drumming.